What's going on, everybody? This is Nathaniel Provincia with the Community Connection. Thank you very much, listeners. We've had just like a tremendous time watching our show continue to grow. We've had some outstanding guests, and we really appreciate everyone's support. We sincerely do. The whole point of this show is to connect leaders with leaders. And Dr. Worster, we've got a tremendous leader on the show. And you were talking with me about Ann, and I was like, I'm not familiar with Ann. You're like, oh, bro, just wait. We're gonna have her on the show. So, Dr. Worster, please introduce Ann for our listeners, please.
So, we're going to get into your background a little bit and your work with the George W. Bush Presidential Center. But before we do that, Nathaniel, you may have heard me mention last year that our team in our county, we won the regional volleyball championships. Other people around my same age. That does not compare with Ann's volleyball history. So, Ann, let's start right there. Talk to us about volleyball.
Hard-hitting questions on the Community Connection, right? Hard-hitting.
And I bet she was a hard hitter.
Yes, I like it. Oh my gosh. Well, we're going into the Wayback Machine, you guys, to talk about this because it's been a few years. But I played volleyball growing up and loved it, and had the chance to keep playing and played in college, which was an awesome experience and helped pay for me to go to Stanford, which was a big deal, to not have to write that tuition check and have a chance to be part of that athletic department, which was incredible.
Okay, I got a question. I'm 5'9" in heels, right? So like I can't I try. I got a lot of effort, no talent, right? And I was on one of those volleyball teams a couple times.
We beat them every time.
Every single freaking time. So I got this question though, Ant. There's something unique to women's volleyball, maybe men's volleyball too, that I don't see in any other sport. Okay, you ready for this? Once again, Community Connection, hard hitting. Every time, whether something happens well or whether something doesn't happen well, the whole team huddles together and loves each other every single time. You don't see that in golf. You don't see that in baseball. You don't see that in college football. Like it's every time it's just like, hey, we got you, girl. We got you. Good. And there's a huddle up. Why does that happen? Is that just like a cultural thing? Is that strategic? What is going on in those conversations where it's like the team always comes back together? I'm fascinated by this.
Okay, Nathaniel, I don't know that anyone has ever asked me that. So
that's why you're on the Community Connection. That's what we do.
I think so. I think that's about if you imagine a volleyball court in your mind, right? It's not a huge amount of space. Things can happen really fast, particularly at a high level. And so you really have to stay connected to your teammates. Oftentimes when we come into the huddle, some of that was like, if we were all teammates and I shanked a ball or something, you could be like, hey, head up, you got it. We're right back at it, right? There's not a lot of time. You got to get yourself moved on past that. And it's helpful to have teammates who do that. We also oftentimes will be giving a play or saying talking about an adjustment that happens very quickly in the middle of the court. So there's a lot of communication that probably happens verbal and non for a team when they come together in the middle like that. But things happen so fast on the volleyball court, and then you've got 6 people, in your half, and everybody's got their role and their assignment. And so you have to stay aligned. Otherwise, you're just going to get, things will start to fall apart. You're going to get mad at each other. Communication breaks down. All the things when teams of any kind fall apart, it's often because alignment and communication has fallen apart. And so that's why I think the huddle every time happens.
Go ahead.
What a wonderful metaphor for what you do now, right? And what we're trying to do, because we cannot do this job alone. We need people. We need advocates to give us agency. So maybe, Ann, you can kind of talk a little bit about what you're doing now and maybe even make a connection to those constant huddles and trying to improve education in America. Look at that. See, that was pretty good, right? That's pretty good.
Yeah. So I have the great honor to be part of the team here at the George W. Bush Institute. I'm the director of Opportunity and Democracy, which is a long way of saying our domestic policy portfolio. That includes things like economic growth, our immigration policy, education policy, and work on strengthening our democracy. All of that is where I grew up in Minnesota, you might say they're kissing cousins. It's all that is interrelated in lots of ways. But K-12 education is sort of my home base and where my deep experience is. I think that, I love working in teams. It's fun. I think you get better together with people and you bounce ideas off each other and things like that. So I think that education is such a complex human endeavor. If you think about in a classroom, all the personalities that might be in a classroom, kids are at different levels, what teacher capacity looks like and knowledge looks like can vary. Then you can expand that into a campus. a district, all these ecosystems, but they're really full of complex humans, right? This is hard work to help young people learn and get on track for who they're going to become as they grow up and what they'll be able to do next. So I always think that is just like a series of teams working together on behalf of kids, and sometimes those teams are working great, and in far too many places it's really not working great in terms of the outcomes for kids. So I don't know if that sort of, I pulled your analogy through, but I think about it's just like an ecosystem of teams working on behalf of kids.
I think everyone should be in a team sport. I think everyone, whether you suck at it or not, everyone needs to be in a team sport, because it's like my kids play soccer, travel. They've been playing travel soccer since they were 5, and it's not that they're trying to be like the next Messi or whatever. It's just they have to work with other human beings that either they like or they don't like. They got to be yelled at a coach whether they like or they don't like. They got to have a goal. They got to huddle up together. They got to try to achieve something. It's really, really hard. And I don't know. I just think the best lessons I ever learned is when I played little league or pee wee football or high school football, or even being in a band. Once again, that's a team sport as well. And need to know a lot about that, man. So I appreciate that, Dr. Worcester.
And talk to us about the relationship of having a strong coach and having a winning team.
Oh, I mean, I think that is that can, like, strong coaching can show up in lots of different ways. It's not always sort of like the bombastic sort of dictator. Sometimes you have a coach who's a really strong personality. I'm sure that comes to mind. You imagine sort of iconic coaches with these big, strong personalities, and sometimes it's a more quiet leadership. But the way I think about it, like, the best coaches think of themselves as teachers, right? That they're looking at a group of people that they have to figure out how to meld together, understand, okay, what's Eric good at? What is Ann good at? What is Nathaniel good at? Like how to figure out how that matches up and how to tee that up. And then also understand, how do you challenge people so they can grow and improve. I think you would even see that like at the pros or the highest level, they're still seeking to improve whatever that sort of edge, and those edges probably get smaller and smaller the better that you get, but that's what will make a difference in an intense time of competition. So I think the very best coaches understand themselves as teachers and people who are developing others. I think that translates into, when you think about really good leaders in a corporate setting, in a school district setting, right? Like, the best leaders are the ones who are thinking a lot about the people in the organization and how do you develop and maximize people so that they are good at what they do, but they're also will keep showing up at work, like that they're not like good in a sprint and then like have burned out, or in some way, like how do we sort of keep that cycle of improvement and people being glad to show up every day, in their schools or whatever, where they're doing incredibly hard work.
Yes. And can you talk to us about your general background in education before your current position? You worked at Stanford, correct? You did Teach for America?
I worked I was not a core member, but I worked for the Teach for America organization in the national office. So I was trained, I went through a traditional teacher prep program. So got a master's in education and did student teaching. I was an 8th grade student teacher. And then, so it was unusual to be on staff at TFA as a credentialed teacher, but not someone who'd gone through the program. And I loved being able to see sort of both experiences doing that. And then had spent my career in the kind of nonprofit or higher ed policy worlds in different ways, often centered around education in different forms. And then I've been at the Bush Institute now for almost 10 years, which has really been wonderful.
Wow. I miss George W. Bush, like you know what I mean? Like, that was like a civil. I mean, we all, might not agree with everything the brother said, but like, it was a little bit, it was more civil than it is now, right? We need to get back to that, and to those times. But like, how did you get involved with this, this institute? It's fascinating work, and I'll be honest with you, you're the first person I've ever met that has that type of position. So I am totally intrigued. How did you fall into this work? Of all the different things you could have picked, right? I mean, you're so well versed. Why this one, right? I'm curious.
Well, I will say I deeply admire President and Mrs. Bush. I think they have had just this incredible life of service, both in the governor's mansion in Austin, which of course President Bush was governor of Texas before he moved to the White House. And they have, the thing I really admire about them is that they're very clear on, here are the values that we hold dear. Here's what is important to us: a real, true love of America and Americans and America's role in the world. And also, of course, they believe deeply in the power of education. So, and so it's been like, to me, it's such an honor to continue what the sort of the legacy of the work that they did in their public service life that the Institute is now moving forward. I joined the Bush Institute actually originally as a consultant working on a project. So just kind of, hey, they had a project that aligned with something I had done. So that's how I got to know them, and was fortunate enough then to come on full time. And then my role has morphed and changed over time to be here. But I think I really admire that they're just sort of clear-eyed um, about a respect for America and Americans and what we do well. And this thought of, I think you probably remember this, President Bush had this very memorable phrase about the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Oh, yes,
and
yes.
what it means, what is the power of policy to help drive improved outcomes for kids. And that's a very complex thing, as you both well know. And I'm sure a lot of people listening know how complicated that is to go from policy to a difference for kids. And I was really inspired and continue to be inspired by their passion for ensuring that every American kid has a chance, can access a great education, and then has the ability to an opportunity to go on and be ready for their next step, whatever that is, right? They may be a 2-year or 4-year degree, it may be a credential program, maybe the military. There's so many options for kids, but how do we ensure that every kid is ready and has some real agency to make choices about their future that will allow them to support themselves, to support their families, to engage in their communities as a fellow citizen, you know, in all the ways that we'd want for ourselves and the people that we love? What does that require to have that for all the kids in this country?
Love it.
And we've mentioned that quote before on this show. Can you just expand on what that means? The soft bigotry of low expectations.
Sure. It's maybe a line of ed policy poetry, if that's a thing. I think it's resonated with so many people, and it's been a couple decades, right, since that was first uttered. But that was really about this idea that if you were out and about in schools around the country, you'd often find somebody who'd say, "Oh, you know what? Those kids aren't really going to learn. They're just kind of doing the best they're ever going to do." And you could apply that to lots of groups. You could think about that. That could be special education students. That could be English language learners. It could be Black students, Latino students, English language, you know, like all sorts of, you could see where that label can be applied to kids. And I think President Bush in that line, his point was, no, every child has the God-given ability to learn. Every child has that. And so what does it require of us to create a system that no longer tolerates the soft bigotry of those low expectations that adults would place on kids, that shows up in lots of ways then in decisions that are made by adults in schools? And not necessarily because people are really acting out of malice, but they're sort of not challenging assumptions that have driven so much of decision making in schools that has really adversely impacted so many kids, and caused real harm and lack of agency through no fault of their own.
Well, it is certainly a powerful phrase. Before we get into like present day stuff, one more question on legacy. Nathaniel and I, we both started during the No Child Left Behind era. What do you think has been the legacy of No Child Left Behind?
Gosh, that's a great question. I would say just the idea that people understand that idea we were just talking about, the soft bigotry of low expectations, that we're sort of naming something that everybody immediately has recognized if they've spent time in the system. I think this is a little bit wonky and nerdy, but something we have that we didn't have before was disaggregated comparable data about student outcomes. So meaning part of No Child Left Behind was the requirement that every state give an assessment, the same assessment to all kids in grades 3 through 8, and then again in high school. And then that data would be disaggregated by subgroup, those groups we were just kind of talking through. So you could see differences by race, ethnicity, gender, English language learner status, special education students. And you can really have apples to apples comparisons of what is happening for kids in our system. So that daylight, that sunlight is so important and gets referenced all the time. It's driven lots of research, but I always think that has eliminated the ability for people to just rely on averages and anecdotes to talk about student success, which I think we all know can really hide what I always call all manner of sins, right? It's really easy to hide things when you're only looking at averages and anecdotes. So I think one of the important pieces of legacy from No Child Left Behind is that we now have those comprehensive, disaggregated, comparable data. And that's something we're really hoping and working to ensure stays in place over time.
One of the salient quotes from Told the Story was teachers just saying, if George W. Bush and his administration for this, I'm against it. Didn't matter anything behind it, any research behind it. It was there for it, so I'm going to be against it, which is an unfortunate reality that we sometimes live in of, I don't like this person for whatever reason, I'm going to disregard everything they stand for. Just what do you think the legacy is that now that we have come around with the science of reading, which is what he was proposing back in the 2000s?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, the partisan, making everything partisan is never good for any of us.
Yep.
Right? Like, and that you gave an example of that, but I think that we could point to many, many examples, unfortunately. And so I think the big idea around that is how do we listen and put the partisan aside so that we're doing right by kids? I think that is, you find that in lots of sectors. It's even more important in education, that the responsibility of all the adults making decisions. I will say on the science of reading, we are so gratified to see that there's been a real shift for so many states and schools. And the part that is heartbreaking to me is how many teachers are working hard in good faith who have not been trained appropriately and are not given the tools and support to do right by kids in schools. And even now, Post sold a story. Post, I think there's something like 40 states now have some sort of laws on the books around the science of reading. But we all know what is happening on a Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon in a classroom is highly dependent on that teacher's knowledge and the tools they have and their principal's knowledge and tools, right? And that variability still means that far kids are not being taught to read with all that we know and the power of research. So I would say the thing that we care a lot about is we hope that there's still a federal role to fund research that helps us understand this. Part of why we know the science of reading is because there's an incredible body of research, a lot of that funded through the federal government grants, that has helped us get to where we are. And I think I really, really hope that there is good pressure and consequences for schools of ed who are responsible for training teachers, that they are actually training them on this. I don't think we would stand for the same sort of difference in our medical schools, right? Like, I always think about this. If there was a med school where somebody was like, you know what, I just really believe in leeches. Like, I just believe in it. I've used those. That's
Love
what
me
I
some
think. It
leeches.
works. Yeah, it works in my clinic. Like, I do it, and like we would be like, are you nuts? Like, no one would ever go to that doctor. So why do we have that? Why do we allow for that kind of interpretation or thing to stand just because someone is not up to speed on the research and is still preparing teachers about whole language or balanced literacy? And that I think we just have to, we need to stay. We know what's right, and that's not it. And we need to do better by kids because we know better. So it's an issue we spend a lot of time on. President and Mrs. Bush are very passionate about literacy and reading. They follow things like the NAEP scores and pay attention to what's happening. Mrs. Bush, of course, is a former teacher and librarian and founder of the National Book Festival. And like they are passionate about literacy and reading. And so it's an issue of great importance for us here on the team.
I think there's, even going back, I don't know, I'm just kind of like talking off the top of my head here. You mentioned about remember Common Core? Remember Common Core? Remember Common Core? And we talk a lot about like Edie Hirsch and, and some of these big educators out there having some kind of national standard for all kids. We got the NAEP, and I get that. But I think there's a part to play of the dysfunction in education. And I hate to say it, is that, there's 50 different interpretations sometimes of what excellence means. Every state's got its own kind of thing. But do you think, Ann, we need more standardization with kind of like what Common Core was talking about, so we can look at apples to apples and not apples to bananas to pineapples to kiwis? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, welcome to our Federalist Republic.
There you go.
Like there is a reason why this doesn't look like that. And I think Common Core showed us what happens when you try to create a national set of standards and force states to follow it. So our system is set up so that there is a very clear, discrete federal role, largely giving money to states and districts, right?
Yeah.
And that a lot of the decision making happens then at the state level, and then actually incredible amount of local control. I'm telling you all what you know, but that's our system of government, how that was set up. And I think it allows for, right, like the beauty of local control is that communities have a lot of input then around how their schools look. I think we are a big fan of the sort of standards based accountability, right? For states to say, here's what's important for kids to know and be able to do in each grade. I love that exists. And honestly, if you crosswalk the state standards, there's not huge difference.
Yeah, they're pretty similar.
Right?
Everyone's got to ask and answer questions.
Yeah,
everyone's got fractions. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so when you think about standards, really are designed to help us know what should every child know and be able to do in each grade. And then you have an assessment that they all take that tells us whether or not they know and can do those things, right? And then that's what the data tells us ultimately at the end. So NAEP, the role of NAEP in all this is when it's given to samples of kids in every state, that is our best apples to apples comparison, right? That really we're looking at how kids are progressing in every state.
This is 12th,
And
12th, are these 12th graders?
It's 4th, 8th, and 12th, but 12th just came out.
4th, 8th, and 12th, but it's a sample.
Yeah, it's a
Gotcha.
sample. And that's different than the state test, of course, is given then to every kid that you can see in a state. And people do things like you could see in Virginia recently that they're like trying to reconcile the difference between their cut scores on their state's exam show kids are doing better than they show on the NAEP. So the NAEP helps, it's kind of like an honesty gap. Like, so we can say, hey, kids in Texas are awesome, but we set our cut rates really low, you know? So like basically if you're breathing, you're passing, and the adults can claim victory and the kids are left to languish. And NAEP is sort of the honesty check on that.
But besides literacy instruction, what else do you see going well, or what do you think are positive national trends in education?
I think we're at a time of some interesting entrepreneurship in education. You know, as one of the things that came out of COVID, right, was that like school models started to look different. It was obviously such a painful time for so many kids in this country, but like where we'd see micro schools, or you'd see lots of like people responding and trying to serve kids at a really terrible time. And I think that idea of entrepreneurship around education is good. There's some of that's a lot of churn and change and can be painful in that, but I think we're learning more. There's a higher tolerance for what school models can and should look like, as opposed to here's what a school is and you have to sort of replicate it exactly. And that doesn't mean that it can't be public schools, right? Like there's lots of versions. I live here in Dallas. Dallas ISD has an incredible range actually of school models within their public system. And so I think all that is really, really interesting. And I think that there is this shift about and more discussion about rigor and knowledge and what we want kids to know and understand. I think it's certainly not a national conversation and there's not consensus about where we should be, but I think it's a really important conversation about what kids need to know, what rigor should look like, how that stacks up internationally. You know, like that's sort of been riding our own coattails, I think, for a while in this country because we've had such a successful education system, both K-12 and in higher ed, and the rest of the world is catching up. And it's a really important time to pay attention to that kind of rigor and knowledge so we can continue to take advantage of things that are uniquely American, which I think has been sort of innovation, you know, entrepreneurship broadly, all these big, new, exciting ideas, whether it's tech or something else that sort of America has been churning out pretty reliably for decades. And how do we, you know, keep that important tradition going for the health of our country?
And who's doing it well? Who do you see out there that's just crushing it? Whether it be states or charter networks, who's doing a great job?
Oh my gosh, a lot of people are. Well, I'm gonna mention a couple of Texas things and then see where my brain goes next. So one of the things, this is a very nerdy thing, but in Texas in the last legislative session, they passed an outcomes-based funding formula for higher ed. That sounds very wonky, but it is transforming the way higher ed institutions work in Texas to get more funding, the better their outcomes are for people. Like, are we graduating people? Are community colleges getting more kids with transfers into a four-year degree if that's what they want to do? So we are incentivizing the kind of actions you want to see by higher ed institutions, which were not measured on those outcomes, really. You know, there weren't a lot of consequences for them around that. And so this is use policy as a catalyst. I think it's already started to change a lot of things in the state and the higher ed system, and I'm really excited to watch what happens next. But I think that kind of innovative policy is really important. I also think we've seen in Texas, Houston ISD has gone through this unbelievable improvement in student outcomes that they went from like, I have to double check the number, but like 40 or 50 failing campuses, and that's a big district. So the last time that those got graded, just a few months ago, they had no failing campuses, right?
Wow.
Like this is a big deal. And this is a controversial one because they did a state takeover of a school district, which, as you guys know, is fraught on lots of fronts, right? Lots of feelings, lots of impact on community to do that. But they have really focused on instruction, to your point about like, how does it look like if you really focus on improving instruction? And they have seen incredible transformation in student outcomes. And now the trick will be, can this can this sustain over time? Is this something that's gonna last over time and really make a big difference in the lives of the kids growing up in Houston ISD? I think I've also seen, places like Indiana is really thinking differently about, what graduates of the K-12 system know and have access to next as they think about their pathways into adulthood. That's fun to watch. I don't know, there's lots of schools that are doing really great things. So I'm kind of thinking about big policy hooks that I'm always curious about where policy is starting to make a difference. Another one I've always loved is Louisiana has done in policy a tiering of high quality instructional materials, right? So that they are not dictating to districts, you have to buy this or have to buy that, but they are very clearly outlining, here's what's high quality, here's what's not. And if you are using, here's incentives to purchase the things that are of the highest quality to use with your kids. So there's lots of interesting ways people are thinking about policy to improve outcomes for kids that I'm encouraged by, because that means a lot of adults in an ecosystem from the governor's mansion on down, right, are thinking about this and how do we improve education, which we're always gratified to see when lots of adults are paying attention to this, right?
Yeah. And I got, man, my brain is tingling with so many great questions. I think they're great, but just from your perspective, what is more important, fidelity to curriculum or integrity to teachers?
Will you say more about what the latter, the integrity to teachers?
So I see a lot, and probably needed, where there's a lot of, like, for example, Louisiana, who's crushing it, by the way. Louisiana, Mississippi, what's going on? Like, watch out, Massachusetts, they're coming after you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like I see it, it's easy to legislate products, right? And materials and research-based stuff. But I could take a research-based program and put it in the hands of a teacher who is not well trained and probably get not very good results. I could take the really, really good, or sometimes I can even take an average program and put it in the hands of an outstanding teacher, and I'll get great results. Is it the tool? Is it the person? I'm very interested in this, right? Because we have a massive teacher shortage, whether we like it or not, right? That's a policy thing. How do we get? So is it that the materials need to be more time on the materials because we're putting them in the hands of people who maybe haven't been as well trained, possibly, with the traditional teacher route? Or do we need to invest more in getting better teachers, better trained folks in there who could take any program, any curriculum, and make it outstanding? I don't know, Ann. What are your thoughts on that, right?
Yeah, that's a big question. And I would just say, yes.
There you go. Okay, very good. All right, there we go. We answered it.
I mean, I think you want, like, the ideal is you've got well-trained teachers who have access to fantastic research-based, rigorous instructional materials, right? Like, what a wonderful world we could have. So, I mean, it's the hard thing about this work, which I'm telling you guys exactly what you've experienced, I'm sure, in your career, is there is no magic wand to wave. There is no one lever to pull, and people are always desperate for the one lever to pull. But I think we want to give decision makers like superintendents and principals some tools. So if you've got half your faculty is well experienced, been with you for a while, doing really well, as a principal, I'm sure, as you're visiting class, who's like on it, who's managing their classroom, understands where their kids are, running a tight ship, paying attention to outcome data, know who that is, right?
Yep.
And then at one point they were new teachers, right? And trying to, survive until Wednesday, right? And so I think you want a variety of tools, because what you will do as someone who is, as a school principal who's leading teachers, you need to be able to engage with your experienced teachers one way. You also need to be able to support your emerging teachers another way. High quality curriculum is good for everybody, right? Like it's good for everybody, adults and kids. And I think in my mind, this is about, like, how do we develop teachers in a really high quality way over time? And that doesn't look like professional development. I'm sure you both sat in at some point, was like some terrible speaker and there was like balloons because it was like initiative of the du jour, whatever it was, and like a sad tray of sandwiches from the grocery. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, and everybody's like grading or getting grumpy in the back, right? Like, there is so much more to what job embedded professional learning and coaching is, that is so much more respectful of teachers and what is required of teachers to do this job well. It is such a hard job. And so I think we just need to stop pretending that some of this other stuff is good enough. It's not. And like, don't hire that Yahoo who's been here several times, who's just not good. Like somebody's just
I
say
agree.
no,
I
no,
agree.
like get the good stuff.
I
Get us a
agree.
coach, But I don't know. Anyway, that's my
That's
soapbox
great.
on that
Yeah,
one.
it's great. I want great materials in great people's hands.
Yeah.
And then I want them to work in great teams, just like in volleyball, to make great decisions for great kids. And I think that that's what, you know, we got to get some teachers. We got to promote this profession. I love education. I love teaching so much. I said this on our last episode. It's the profession and that makes all
No.
professions possible. Yes, I'm saying it again, Worcester. It's the profession that makes all professions possible. I'm going to stick to it. And it's just a beautiful profession. And we need more people to understand that if we want to keep promoting democracy, it starts in
Yeah.
our schools. I don't care if it's charter school, magnet school, private school, whatever it is, public school.
Yes.
We got to get
So
great
and how do
people
we
in
get
our.
more people interested in being educators?
Yes, and because I'm sure that's a policy thing, right? How do we
Oh
get
my
more
gosh.
teachers
What
in the
policies do you
classroom?
create?
I mean, I think it's like, oh gosh, right? There's so many ideas about that, but I think it is it is elevating the profession in ways that are visible to young people. So I can tell you one of the things I've loved in Tennessee, what they have done is figured out how to create like an apprenticeship pathway for people into teaching. And what was important about that, and this was Penny Schwinn, who was the commissioner when this happened, I think she worked with Commerce, either Commerce or Labor, I can't remember, but you got an untraditional, non-traditional funding stream to pay for the apprenticeship for kids. So it was not like, okay, I got to figure out how to pay for school and then work unpaid while I get this experience, clinical experience that you need. Created a very different looking pathway for people to get into the profession that pays them. And I thought that is like a brilliant, like doing more of that kind of thing that actually pulls people in is really important. I think from another policy perspective, one of the things I love that they're doing here in Texas is a teacher incentive allotment that allows districts to pay higher performing teachers more, right? Like teachers are so wedded to the step scale salary scale, which by like that would, I mean, that made me crazy. Like to think about that, where you're like, I'm looking across the campus. I know who's just barely showing up and dialing it
Sure.
in, and I know who's crushing it. And guess what? They're getting paid the same, or the person who's dialing it in might be making more because they've been here for 30 years.
Yeah.
Like, how is that an incentive for the best and brightest to come up and show up in the ways that you guys are talking about, right? Like to really
Yeah.
be a focused instructional leader doing right by kids that and all the work that's required in doing that. If they're like, what's like intrinsic rewards are great, yes, but ultimately they have to support themselves and their family. And are we making that real for
Yep.
people and really professionalizing this in a way that reflects the rigor that's required of teachers? And I think that's a big question for us.
I got 3 ideas for your institute. You ready? I got 3
I'm
ideas for
ready.
you. All right,
I'm
here we
ready.
go. Why not? I'm just gonna throw them out, right? Especially in Texas. The first thing, at every Friday Night Lights football game, because Texas, y'all love y'all some football, give a standing ovation to our public school teachers and all teachers. There you go. Bush can pull that off, right? We got this. So just we do our military, yay, military, stand up. Every Friday Night Light, wouldn't that be great? Oh, here's another one. At Hub, isn't there a Hubby? What's it called? What's the Houston airport named after Bush? Which one is it?
Oh,
Hobby.
Hobby?
Houston Hobby? Yeah. Teachers at Houston Hobby line up right after our servicemen and women. Thank you for your service. How about that?
I
See,
love it.
outside the box thinking. Only a Houston
love
Hobby,
it.
right?
That was two. What was the third one? You said
Third one is
three.
no state tax. You don't have to pay state tax if you're a teacher. There you go. That's easy, right? That's an easy one.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, right? There's like loan forgiveness for teachers. Like there's lots of economic incentives,
Yeah.
I think. if people
And the
wanted
fourth
to-
one? Fourth one?
Oh,
Oh, I got to throw one more in. I'm on a roll.
Yeah.
Don't just incentivize the highest performing teacher. Incentivize the highest performing team. Just saying.
But
Because for every good
here's my
teacher,
only thing is we've all done group work. And you gotta let
your Stanford team at what Ann didn't win, the team won, Ann.
well, that's true, but everybody on that team was working really hard. What if you saddle me with like a,
Then
you
they
know,
don't get the Skrilla. They don't get the cheddar, baby. They don't get the cheddar. So
and I'm going to hit you up with two last questions.
I'm ready.
One, where can our listeners follow your work or learn more about your initiatives that you're going for?
Yes. So the best place to find us is bushcenter.org, and you can access all sorts of policy information, policy briefs, reports, lots of things. Bushcenter.org is a great place to go. And then, of course, we're on all the socials that you might expect. Lots of stuff gets posted to the Bush Center LinkedIn. So I'd always recommend people go to those places, and they should be able to find, hopefully, everything they want and more, and they can contact us through that website too.
That's
Thank you.
outstanding.
And finally, words of inspiration for our audience of educators.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't know what I could share because I feel like I'm inspired by so many teachers and who are showing up in incredibly challenging places and really delivering great results for kids. I mean, it's just amazing to me to watch. Is there anything better, I think, than like watching a master teacher do what they do is really, really inspiring. So I think more than anything, I would say thank you to all the folks who are showing up right now and are now in, probably if you're here in Texas, I think this was week 7 or 8 of school, so just deep into it enough where, the shine has worn off and the real work is happening. So I don't know that I would say any inspiring words other than thank you, and that we are fully and deeply believe that a strong education system in this country is the backbone of a strong American democracy, and that really matters now. It really matters for all of us to know how to show up and be Americans with each other, and not always agreeing, but we know how to have discourse, we know how to debate ideas, we know how to think, because that's part of what our school system has prepared us to do.
Thank you.
I love it. And I can't wait to go to Houston Hobby and line up right next to those service members. You're going to make that happen. Only in Houston, only at Houston Hobby. And
I'm
thanks
going to get
so
on
much.
that. I'll get on it right now.
That's policy number 1. Hey, I was just on this Community Connection podcast, and you know what he just said? He said, I'm telling you, Ann, it'll go over like gangbusters. I'm telling you. Walker, Dutra, take notes. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on the Community Connection and your advocacy. You're an inspiration. I loved this conversation. It took a lot of really cool turns, and thank you for just hanging in with us. I really appreciate everything that you do. We really, really do.
Well, thank you guys. I loved being with you. So good luck with the show. I'm glad you're out there doing the good work and getting people inspired about education.
Awesome.